Imagine, you just won millions of dollars and a year later, you're in jail for manslaughter. Or maybe you made better decisions with your money and spent large sums on illegal party tricks, gambling, and cosmetic surgery. Better yet, maybe you didn't fall victim to the lottery winner's curse and you found yourself whining and dining with high political leaders like one lucky winner did. Regardless, you're going to hear voices in your head saying, "Welcome to the good life." And Mr. William Post is no exception after he won a $16.2 million jackpot in the Pennsylvania lottery in 1988. At the time, it was the largest lottery jackpot ever won by a single person. However, his story did not pan out as many would have anticipated.
What? Look at this. $26,000 for one dinner.
Okay, no, this can be explained.
First, he went on a reckless spree and spent a lot of his winnings on expensive purchases, such as a mansion, a restaurant, and a plane. In fact, barely 2 weeks after he received his first annual payout of $500,000, he had spent almost all of it. By 1993, barely 5 years after his lucky win, Post had a message for the world. He said, "Everyone dreams of winning money, but nobody realizes the nightmares that come out of the woodwork." And his nightmares were indeed many, as his brother frantically tried to get him killed, even to the extent of hiring a hitman.
We wait for him to show up.
All of this to get a share of the dough. Eventually, Post declared bankruptcy and died of respiratory failure in 2006. The lottery win should have changed his life, yet it seemed to only leave him in a worse state than when he began. But perhaps the story would be different for this Canadian single mother who was on welfare and struggling to make ends meet. Sharon Tirabassi won a $10.5 million jackpot in the Ontario lottery in 2004. While it provided relief from her money worries, it did not last. She used her winnings to buy a big house, cars, clothes, vacations, and lavish gifts for friends and family. I mean, come on, we would probably do the same, right? However, without a financial plan, her spending quickly spiraled out of control, and Tirabassi's fortune was falling out from underneath her. Her family hugely benefited from her generosity, and she had a problem saying no to people she felt were in need. By 2007, in just 3 years, she had blown through half of her winnings. Within a decade, the fortune was gone, and Tirabassi is now back to a very regular life. Thankfully, she was wise enough to keep some money in trust for her 6 children, which they will have access to when they turn 26. Hopefully, she can't even touch it. But if $10 million couldn't buy a lifetime of happiness, perhaps $31 million would. Billy Bob Harrell Jr. was a Texas man who won a $31 million jackpot in the Texas lottery in 1997. Carroll was a former Pentecostal preacher who had been struggling to make ends meet, but his lottery win promised to change his life forever. At first, Carroll used his newfound wealth to help his family and friends, including buying cars and homes for his loved ones. He also donated to his church, subscribed to our channel, and gave it a like. However, Carroll quickly became overwhelmed by the attention and the pressure that came with his sudden wealth. He was receiving random calls from people, strangers, and people he hadn't seen in years demanding help. But aside from his philanthropic activities, his spending habits also spiraled out of control, and he began to make extravagant purchases, including an exotic home, luxury cars, and other high-end items. Barely 2 years after winning the lottery, he was found dead in his home with a gunshot wound. Carroll had taken his own life. Reports said that he was unhappy about his life and reacted badly to a recent divorce. The next story may shock you, but Carroll is not the only lottery winner who died due to problems resulting from their mega millions. Evyroncayoli made the news in 1991 after winning a $5 million jackpot in a Canadian lottery. Prior to the win, her husband, Joseph Roncayoli, was a huge successful physician who earned as much as $20,000 a month. The couple lived in a wealthy neighborhood in Toronto and seemed to be an idyllic family. But in 2003, Ivy was found dead in their mansion with needle marks on her legs. At first, no alarm was raised since she was elderly and was said to have died from natural causes. but after an autopsy revealed a deadly amount of alcohol and painkillers in her body. Joe was questioned. It turns out that he was angered by how Ibby spent her winnings, including close to $1 million given to a secret son. The jury found Joe Roncayoli guilty of manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 7 years in jail. Speaking of couples, perhaps if both parties are involved in the financial planning, things may turn out better. Or maybe not, as these next two stories show. Laura and Roger Griffiths said that before they won the lottery jackpot worth $2.2 million in 2005, they had lived a peaceful marital life with little to no conflict. However, things took a turn for the worse after their win. But it was first beautiful before it got ugly. They bought a beautiful house over $1 million, a Porsche, a soft-top Audi, and went beyond the shores of England on several expensive trips to dreamy locations in Dubai, New York, and Monaco. Roger also spent $30,000 on a record with his old university band, while Laura indulged in expensive designer items. Life seemed to be good, but in 2013, everything was gone. The money and the 14-year marriage. For Alex and Roto Toth, a couple from Florida who won a $13 million jackpot in the Florida lottery in 1990, they stayed married. Still, their story is not one of success and happiness, but rather tragedy. Following their win, they immediately began spending their newfound wealth on all the luxury that they could lay their hands on. They lodged in a hotel for 3 months, spending $1,000 every night. In addition to this, extravagant purchases, expensive trips, and gambling are deeply into their winnings. By the time they eventually decided to settle down, buy some property, and live responsibly, their money had been greatly depleted. And bankruptcy came calling a while after, twice.
The real question is this: was all this legal?
By 2008, they had both pled guilty to tax fraud charges. But Alex died suddenly due to a heart attack. Rhoda spent 2 years in jail before being released, free, but alone and broke. She insisted that the much talked about lottery curse was real and that it ruined her family. That brings us face to face with the big question: is the lottery curse real? Well, see this wild story from Michael Carroll, a British man who won $11.6 million in the national lottery in 2002. Carroll was a bin man before his win, but thanks to crazy spending habits and wild fantasies, he was back to the bin barely 10 years after. He went on a spending spree, buying expensive cars, a mansion, and other luxury items. Carroll also became known for outrageous behavior, including throwing wild parties and hiring strippers. He would spend large amounts of money on expensive alcohol, cocaine, and sex parties, where he ordered women to go naked while carrying cocaine on trays. Now broke again, he claims to have no regrets, saying that his days of fortune were the best 10 years of his life.
That is what it is.
Isn't that the perfect description for it?
That is what it is.
However, he also admits that if he still had as much money as he once did, he'd be dead. No thanks to his love for the fast life. For some others, like Callie Rogers, Mega Millions came too early in life, and they didn't know what to do with it. She was a 16-year-old British single mother who won $2.3 million in the national lottery in 2003. Rogers was working as a checkout girl at a supermarket before this life-changing win. However, the attention and pressure that came with her sudden wealth soon took a toll on Rogers, and she began to struggle with depression and addiction. She spent large sums of money on drugs, gambling, and cosmetic surgery. The young winner also splurged on vacations and parties, with almost half of her earnings going to support her friends and family. Soon, it was all gone, and she began living on benefits. In a 2018 interview, she attributed her reckless spending to being young and said that she was starting a nursing course at the University of Lancashire. It's unclear if she went through with this, as in 2021, she was given a 22-month ban for driving when she was high on cocaine. Whew! Still, with all these tragic stories, it appears that some lottery winners actually had intentions to spend wisely. A good example is Jennie Lee, a South Korean immigrant who won an $18 million jackpot in the Missouri lottery in 1993. She was a single mother of two who had moved to the United States in the 1980s and worked as a wig shop owner and seamstress. First, she moved her family into a multi-million-dollar home. This was the only large purchase that she made before channeling her winnings to support a variety of causes and charities, including education, politics, and community organizations. She donated millions of dollars to the Democratic Party and various political candidates. And soon, she was dining with Bill Clinton, Al Gore, and South Korean President Kim Dae-jung. However, things were not as rosy as they seemed. Lee had made some unwise decisions and borrowed heavily against her winnings. In 2001, she filed for bankruptcy, and her lottery winnings were long gone. Anyway, despite her financial troubles, Lee's philanthropy and generosity have left a lasting impact. A notable one being in the Washington University of Law, where her name was inscribed on a reading room. But there's a man who seems to be breaking the lottery winner curse. His name is Luke Pitard, a man from the United Kingdom who won $1.6 million in the National Lottery in 2006. His first lavish spendings were an expensive wedding, a new home, and a holiday with his new wife in the Canary Islands. One would assume that he's about to tread the same self-destructive path as most other winners. But his story is quite surprising. A few months later, he returned to his McDonald's job, saying that he was young and wanted to keep working. Luke insisted that despite being a millionaire, he loved his job and believed there was more to life than money. It's been over 10 years, and I wonder how he's doing. But I guess he isn't bankrupt yet, because you know what they say, no news is good news. So, do you still want to win the Mega Millions lottery? Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any amazing content.